the most techno shit that I've ever heard. A techno DJ hating on his own techno through another techno DJ that played his techno, and then saying that that techno that is his own isn't techno enough. Holy fuck. Hey everybody, Jesse with RaveSmart, and this will be the first time that I record an episode like this, but if you have been paying attention to techno Twitter at all, you are aware of the situation or these responses by Ben Sims against something that was said by Eric Prydz, and then the joining of Dave Clarke into the mix as well. So I just wanted to kind of react to this, give my opinion on it, and see what you guys think. So just as some backstory, on September 4th, Eric Prydz made a post that just said techno ... 1990 through 2004 is greater than 2005 to now. And that was followed up by a response by a random Twitter follower, Claudio R., Inter Milan fan. I don't know much about this guy, but he said that definitely not. Techno industry has grown up tremendously during the last years, and maybe by consequence, there is also more shit stuff. To which Eric then replied, in the 90s, techno was the music of the future. Today, it's the music of the past. Now, I think that's a pretty bold statement to make. Given the position that Eric Prydz is in, you know, he should obviously know that statements like that from his level are going to be ricocheted off the entire scene, and it's going to get some attention. So in walks Ben Sims to say verbatim, "Shh up, you cheesy Muppet. You wouldn't know techno if it punched you in the face. Maybe stick to posting pics of yourself in business class while the world's ending, twat." Obviously a little hostility from Ben Sims about Prydz being in business class, living that life. I don't blame him. I mean, I'm sort of on Ben Sims' side here. Probably not the best look during the thing that's going on right now. But, you know, he has that privilege. That's what Prydz does, and he's attained that level of success through genres other than techno, which is, you know, even more interesting. Obviously, this causes a huge melee of memes, shit talking, whatever else that's going on. I think one of my favorite responses was by some guy named Jockster DJ, who said if this tweet was a film scene, it would be the Ray Liotta pistol whipping scene from Goodfellas. Valid point. So, I mean, for me, this is kind of a tough beef to have between DJs, producers, artists, whatever we want to say for namesake here. On one side, Ben Sims legitimately is probably one of my favorite technical DJs involved in techno. The guy can smoothly transition between multiple tracks at one time. This guy is somebody that you literally want to watch on the decks versus Eric Prydz, who, you know, as Cirez D, makes a more palatable, approachable, main stage type of techno, and the production value that goes into a Prydz or Cirez D show is going to be much higher than what you're going to see from a Ben Sims show. Now, the difference obviously is you don't show up to a Ben Sims party to see a bunch of flashing lights. You show up to a Ben Sims party to see him absolutely rip the decks. Whereas you do show up to a Prydz party for just clean transitions and an amazing show. So I don't know that these two guys really fall into the same space. So the beef ends up sort of just being underground techno or quote unquote underground techno at this point versus mainstream, whatever the fuck the trend is at this time anyway. Now, I think better dissected is going to be Eric Prydz' statement in calling out two different eras of techno. Now, 2005 to now is a pretty broad statement to make because the genre and subgenres of techno from a production aspect and from the expectations of your average listener has changed drastically as it has become more commercially viable and more business techno has been produced. To Eric Prydz's defense, he is, for the most part, right in a sense that business techno is basically just fucking trance. I mean, it is not like we're making some type of genre that has not been done. Granted, production levels may be much more advanced than they once were, but it is rehashing a lot of what was done for years and years in the past. Back in the 90s, I mean, techno truly was a futuristic genre, like many other genres involved in electronic music. So I see what he's saying. I see where he's coming from. I think making such a broad statement like that sort of throws himself into the fire for whatever reason, and likely whatever the reason that is probably one that he orchestrated and wanted to have happened. But I don't think that really what he's saying is that far off from the truth from his perspective of being somebody that is viable to the mainstream as far as quote unquote techno is concerned, or business techno. And I think that they are sort of rehashing things from the past. Additionally, we have to take a look at the trend currently in techno, which is basing, even on the underground side, a lot of the entire aesthetic of it on what was happening in the 90s. You know, these records are starting to sound a lot more like classic techno. And I think that that's a direct response to the Eric Prydz, the Adam Bayers, the business techno producers of the world making such an unbelievably polished, commercially viable type of techno that everybody wants to do something that is the opposite of that. And that is that era of techno, which is interesting to hear Prydz take that stance, but then not play that type of techno. Now, the irony is what type of techno Prydz did play at Arc Music Festival. But before we get to that, I want to talk about Dave Clarke then jumping into the mix to serve up his own opinion. So Dave Clarke jumps in on Facebook and he basically makes a statement on the whole thing. And he says, a few days ago, people were DMing me to get involved, but I didn't see much of a point as guardian of techno in parentheses, and the only person I have ever seen convincingly rock 3 vinyl decks consistently, parentheses, we'll come back to that. Ben Sims dealt the blow, and from the heart swiftly and humanely, parentheses considering. I will say this, though, Eric is not wrong, but only not wrong from his context. Eric will only play at exceptionally commercial events, and the quote-unquote techno he will view is formulaic, lackluster, and not what myself or Ben would call techno. The problem is not Eric Prydz, a person who, parentheses, for those here that are unaware of his existence, parentheses, became famous due to a video of aerobic butts shimmering to a worn-out cliche of a groove, but what techno is now. He refers to what people in the general public think it is, as he is part of that same demographic, but with a longer history. Until business techno is not seen as the true heir to the techno heritage, this will always be a problem, but there is way too much money involved, which turns people, way too many venture capitalists involved, which that doesn't even fucking make sense at the end, but okay. Big up to Ben as ever. And then a day later, I believe, well, no, it was a day later. He then follows up and he says, you know what? Yesterday's post highlighted I should just be clear about Ben. He certainly deserves it. I have heard Ben play since the mid-90s and say this with true conviction. For me, he is the only true UK 3-deck wizard. I added it to a comment in a previous post that has been thoroughly consistent with his music and never, ever watered it down. He also has a big love for reggae and cheeky edits. Some of those mixes have accompanied me and provided aura bliss during the holidays and gig travels. Cheers, Ben. Now, I think Dave Clarke made a lot of great points. I think his message was intended to be very positive. In the end, I don't necessarily agree with throwing the title Guardian of Techno around so casually. I think that there are plenty of other guys that may deserve that title, but I don't know that anybody is the guardian of techno. That's not a title that I think deserves to be given out to anybody. In addition to that, I know that he tried to go back and correct this because he did say he was the only person that he's ever seen convincingly rock 3 vinyl decks consistently, which anybody that has seen Jeff Mills, especially people that have seen Jeff Mills play in the 90s, very specifically, know that that's exactly what the fuck he did. So I think Dave was way off his rocker to make that comment up front, and I'm glad that he went back and actually made a correction to that. Now, the irony of Dave Clarke going off about Eric Prydz and business techno is that Eric Prydz at Arc Music Festival played a Dave Clarke track. So it is just the most ironic shit ever to hear Dave Clarke speak before he knows that he's being represented by that DJ he's talking shit about. And I don't know that Dave was really trying to talk shit about Eric Prydz. I think he was trying to take a very neutral, understanding approach and really approach the industry or the techno scene versus attacking Eric Prydz's character. But I think there's a lot of irony when you are sticking up for Ben, who did attack Eric, yet Eric is playing your own music. It's honestly, when Dave Clarke jumped into this, I was like, man, he's kind of jumping up in the middle of this. What's the point of that? But then I realized that is probably the most techno shit that I've ever heard. A techno DJ hating on his own techno through another techno DJ that played his techno, and then saying that techno that is his own isn't techno enough. Holy fuck. So personally, I don't really want to take a side on this. Generally speaking, I'm going to gravitate to Team Ben Sims. I would say that as a DJ that I look up to, I would want to take his side. I appreciate what he has done. I appreciate what he does. And for the most part, anybody involved with techno is going to side with him because of the dues that he's paid and how real he has kept it. He is not somebody that's jumping around from trend to trend. He is steady on what he represents and the ideals that he represents. I will say that I have gone to a Cirez D show and had a great fucking time. So I really don't want to stand anywhere in particular. My view is that I think everybody plays a big role in this. There are going to be plenty of Ben Sims fans and Dave Clarke fans that only find out about them because of the work that Prydz has done in his career. Now, where I can see anybody in the techno scene being very bitter is that because of Prydz's influence and because he is somebody that can influence new people to get into techno, when he makes a comment like this, it then starts to detract people from this scene. Now, the question is, are those people that the techno scene really wanted anyway? Is there any more room left? Or are we shutting the doors right now? Or are there newcomers coming in from borderline EDM that may see some benefit in sticking around a little bit? Now, the one thing I will say on the Ben Sims camp is that this type of display of behavior, whether you want to call it professional or not, is also a detractor, right? Nobody wants to come out to something, especially somebody that's brand new, and feel like they're going to be, insulted just for being new to the genre, right? Because they don't know anything, and all the techno that they know is basically business techno. So I think everybody is sort of wrong here, and I think everybody needs to sort of pump the brakes and take a look at where they stand in this, and how can we approach this productively in the future. So it seems to me like this is kind of a shit show, but it's been pretty entertaining. It's been sort of fun to see all the comments that people are making. I think it does stir up the conversation. I think that it is something that needs to take place. I think that more of these conversations need to take place on Twitter. Frankly, Twitter is super toxic and very annoying, especially techno Twitter. But when you see people making great points like this or having conversations and it's starting a conversation between folks, I kind of appreciate that because at least it's accomplishing the goal that you set out for. But what's your opinion? I want to know what other people think. Do you guys think that Eric Prydz was in the wrong? I mean, do we think that that was a pretty stupid thing to say on such a public forum and as such a public figure? Or is he on point? Do you agree with him? And, what's your take on Ben Sims? I mean, was he out of line and speaking up and telling this man to shh up? Or is he right on point? I mean, does Eric need to shut the fuck up sometimes? I don't really know, but I am open to hearing what you have to say in the comments. For now, if this is your first time tuning into this channel, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on social media at RaveSmart TV, and I'll see you for the next episodes.